1 second and we'll be ready. All right, you're good to go whenever you want, Alexis.
All right. Karen, I think you're on.
Okay, so I'd like to call to order the special meeting for the Conservation Commission and the Wetland Agency. Today is Thursday, April 30th, 2020. It's 6 o'clock. Can I have the roll call?
Yes. I'm unmuting all your commissioners. Karen DeStephanis,
Present.
Ed Halwinko,
Yep, still here.
John Mailing,
Here.
Steve Clocky.
Yep.
And Cheryl Brown.
Here.
Perfect.
Okay, so before we get started, I just want to say, Karen DeStephanis, it was decided that I'd be leading tonight's video meeting because I guess most of you are aware our chair, John Barrow, passed away because of the virus. And sorry. So we have to go ahead, and he's going to be very missed. He was a very, very decent person, and it was a shock to all of us. And I would like to extend my sympathy to their family. So I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything. I can't say much more than that.
Well, I would chip in. I would just like to say that having worked with him on the land trust and with Mary for several years, I found him to be just an absolutely terrific guy, a friend to everyone, and a sense of humor that was so dry you could stand on it in a flood. He was a terrific fellow, and he will certainly be missed.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I know that Lisa Shanahan, who was a former conservation commissioner and is now on the Common Council, had expressed interest in speaking and expressed kind of community interest. John lived down in Rowayton, and he worked he was served as a on the sixth taxing district for years. I didn't hear back from Lisa today, so I think that we might not have anyone calling in, but I think at a future meeting when there is kind of more opportunity for the community to get together, I think they're interested in using the Conservation Commission meeting as a potential platform to speak more about them. But we'll see if Lisa dials in, but I don't see her yet. So,
Okay.
If we could just be as flexible as possible, given that we're just learning how to do this.
Right. I agree.
All right. Well, if everybody's ready to go, I'll move on to item 3, which is the receipt and discussion, which is S20 549 310 Wilson Avenue, Webb Construction LLC, establishment of a contractor's yard for storage of processed materials adjacent to a wetland.
I think that the applicant's party is all here, and maybe Brian, can you start to unmute them? I'll just give a very brief description of what's being proposed. And I'll start with inland wetlands versus tidal wetlands. Inland wetlands, as you know, are based on the soil type. And so whenever you have a poorly drained soil, as defined by the wetland regulations, poorly drained soils are classified as inland wetland soils unless they are tidal wetlands. And so tidal wetlands are based on their relative elevation, their proximity to tidal waters, and their vegetation. And so a lot of tidal wetlands are obviously underlain by very poorly drained or poorly drained soils, but they're not wetland soils because of their proximity to saltwater, elevation, or vegetation. And in this case, the property does have a lot of tidal wetlands. So the application is also being reviewed by the Coastal Area Management regulations, which are part of zoning. But above those tidal wetlands is a narrow sliver of inland wetlands, and that's why it's in front of you this evening. What they're proposing is a contractor's yard, and that's kind of the limits of my brief introduction. So I'll give it to the applicant and Attorney Suchi.
Hey, that's great. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much for taking the time this evening and for all of us to endure the new normal that we have. I hope all of you and your families and friends are well and safe. And I too extend my deepest condolences to all of you on the loss of your colleague. I didn't have that much interaction with Mr. Varel, but the interactions that I did have, he seemed most reasonable, rational, and certainly respectful of applicants and members of the public. So he will be missed. And I do want you to know that our sympathies are with you at this difficult time, the loss of your colleague and friend. With me this evening is Kate Throckmorton of Environmental Land Solutions. She prepared the wetlands map and the wetlands report that you'll hear a little bit about, as well as Dean Martin, who a professional engineer with Grumman Engineering, and Dean did all of the civil engineering work for the proposed contractor's storage yard. So just by way of background, the property that we're talking about, and you'll have to forgive me, I don't have the best audiovisual materials, but I'll try. If anyone wants to take a look. I don't know how much you can see, but that's the general overview area. In blue is where the proposed contractor storage yard is. And you'll see where I'm pointing on this side, we've got Meadow Street and Wilson Avenue. And on that side of the property, you'll notice there are a variety of industrial uses, whether they be other contractors' yards, city carting storage facility, LeBlanc's, LaJoy's, Grasso Construction, F&G Construction. So it is an industrial area, and the property is zoned industrial number 1. It's about 2.3 acres in size, and as Kate has on her plan, she'll show you, it's long and narrow with wetlands on 2 sides, basically. Right now, the property is vacant. There are no structures, there's no parking, there's nothing on it. It has no drainage and it's devoid of vegetation. So one of the things that we propose, in addition to using the property as a storage yard for materials, is to increase the landscaping, add landscaping that doesn't right now exist. I'm sure Kate will go through the functions of the wetlands that exist on the property, so I don't want to steal her thunder. And certainly I won't be able to explain them with any degree of experience. And then Dean will walk you through very briefly the proposed drainage patterns and the like. As you can see from what's, I think this is up on the screen right now, the Google map of the blue area, which is the approximate location of the storage yard. And to the left of that blue area, there's a structure that says Web Construction Indoor Crushing Facility. That's an existing facility owned by my client. The concept would be for materials that are processed within that structure to then be brought across a 50-foot wide path right of way over to this proposed area. Materials would be stored in piles segregated by the type. They would meet the requirements for height of piles, be covered, and have some dust suppression system to keep dust and other particulate matter at a low level. So with that, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like Kate to walk you through very briefly the existing on-site wetlands, their functions and values, and what's being done to mitigate any impacts. So Kate?
Sure. Is it possible to get the other aerial on the screen? It kind of gives a good overview of the neighborhood.
The one that we were using just before?
No, the other one.
The which one? The aerial?
Yes.
Yes. Hold on. The same aerial that was up before.
No, there was another one that shows
Okay.
a little bit of a broader view.
Okay. There's this one.
Yes. So this one just shows you a much broader view of the neighborhood with Wilson and Meadow Street to the right side of your screen. The industrial uses along that road there, the access road coming off of Meadow, coming to the current Crossing Indoor Facility, and the area that's highlighted in blue and yellow is really the only area that's shown on the survey. So seeing the survey itself is to me kind of disorientating because it just shows one long, very strip. And so once you get onto this strip, which, excuse me, appears to be a connection to the other construction yard on Wilson Avenue, it certainly historically is cut through a tidal marsh that is associated with the Village Creek on both sides of it, essentially where the yellow portion of the highlighted area is. And that area is targeted to be replanted and mitigated and to revert back to a natural area, where the blue area, and Dean will go into a little more detail, will be used for storage. As you can imagine from looking at this picture, all of the areas adjacent to the tidal marsh have tidal wetlands and also a very narrow strip of inland wetlands immediately above them. The wetlands ranges anywhere from approximately to 8 feet wide at the widest port. So because of the complete consumption really of the buffer on top of this area where it's been utilized and currently just a dirt surface. The wetland functions are extremely limited, but they would be expected to include groundwater discharge, sediment retention due to the area is vegetated, nutrient removal, and product export. The area doesn't have any significant trees, but there are a handful of pin oaks in the area. The primary vegetation is Phragmites, but it does include alder, as well as a good stand of Japanese knotweed. And the rest of the area on the periphery is primarily warm season grasses and other native meadow grasses. So just briefly, the mitigation plan, when it's implemented, will add over 100 trees to the area. Will provide certainly a little more of a buffer. If maybe we should go to my rendered plan.
Great.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, this plan really just shows the very narrow strip of that long access road in between the two industrial sites. To the right side of the screen is the area that's proposed for the construction area, and the left side is proposed to be replanted with mitigation. Below the construction area, you will notice there's also an area it's going to be naturalized as well, and that strip runs for anywhere from 21 to 72 feet in width, and that will be planted back into a meadow and allowed to naturalize. And the area to the left side of the screen is over 8,500 square feet of new mitigation area. And that kind of gives you a brief overview of what I'm planning. I think maybe Dean can go into the details on how the construction site will be created and contained.
Hello, everyone. Dean Martin with Grumman Engineering. As stated, this tract, which is known as parcel or as tract 3, is approximately 2.3 acres. It's a long, narrow strip. It runs north and south. The proposed contractor's yard is going to be located in the northern and western portions of the property, and that's going to comprise about 0.5 acres. The contractor's yard will be surrounded by a concrete block wall ranging in height up to 20 feet. That'll be totally surrounding the material storage area. And additionally, on the outside of the concrete block wall will be planted 7 to 8 foot tall arborvitaes. They'll be spaced at approximately 6 feet on center, with a siltation fence placed on the outside of the arborvitaes. The area, as mentioned, is currently just dirt. So what the contractor is proposing is to place some crushed asphalt or millings, if you will, along the surface of the material storage area. This will keep dust down, and it'll also help with erosion control. The area at the entrance, which is coming off from this 50-foot or this, yes, the 50-foot wide access strip, they'll have a gate there, and then there'll be a paved entry area. And then adjacent to the paved entry area will be a permanent anti-tracking pad, which will be like a 12-inch layer of 2-inch trap rock. This will help with keeping materials from being transported back and forth out of the site. Now, within this asphalt area, we have provided drainage, which will comprise of a catch basin, an oil grit separator unit, and then some below ground retention. This is sized to maintain the zero increase in runoff based on essentially through the 100-year storm event. As Kate had mentioned, the wetland soils are located on the eastern side of the property and along the southwestern portion of the, I should say, of the proposed stockyard area. That about covers my presentation. Thank you.
Okay.
If
So I
anyone has
think,
I'm sorry, if anyone has any questions of Kate or myself or Dean, we're happy to answer them at any time.
yeah, so let's talk about that for a second before we get into questions. I don't know, I can't see if anybody raises their hands. So what I don't want to happen is people jumping all over each other. So do either Alexis or Brian, can you see if someone's raising their hand?
Yeah, so far nobody is right now. If anybody has, John just raised his hand. So.
Okay, I think we should just go with the protocol at this point of, if you have a question, raise your hand, and then Brian, you can kind of control who's talking.
Okay, yep, John just raised his hand, so I'll unmute John.
Yeah, I just wanted to verify. I thought it was a good presentation. I understand it. I have seen the property because I live nearby. What you're talking about is taking a very long strip, dividing it more or less in the center, and looking at it from the Woodward Avenue side. The left-hand side is going to basically be returned to trees and appropriate plantings, and the right-hand side is going to be used for the storage. Is that, have I got that right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see, let me call on Steve.
Okay, so I have a question with respect to the flooding potential. Because it's a tidally influence, Dean, have you considered any problems with potential flooding, and if we're going to have any runoff towards the wetland, or either tidally or inland or whatever?
Yes, the western 40 to 50 feet of the storage area is going to be below that elevation 11, which is the flood elevation in this location. The construction of the block wall will include the lower two sections of the block, which will be about 6 feet high, will be wrapped in filter fabric, which will allow water to go through, but will trap any sediment, and it will prevent sediment flow from going out of the storage area.
Okay.
All right, Stephen, you had a question?
What's there now? Like you're proposing this upwards of 20-foot high concrete block wall. What is there now that maintains the dirt level as it is currently?
Nothing.
There's, yeah.
Is it a slope? Is it like a drop off? Is it
It's a level site essentially.
level with the water?
No, it's a raised area above the water, approximately 8 to 10 feet above the flood or above the wetland line, and it's leveled. It's been previously leveled.
So it's just rocks or whatever at their angle of repose, I guess would be the technical term, is what keeps that dirt at the 8 to 10 feet above the water.
No, it's just a slope that's grown in over time. And the upper area is just a flat area, which was leveled at some point in the, in the past, and it's just dirt covered.
It would, I think it's best described as kind of it used to be a road, dirt access way to the property to the south. So if you think of a bermed road that bisects a tidal wetland, that was done a long, like Dean said, a very long time ago.
Got it.
All right, Cheryl had a question.
I was wondering what materials are going to be stored in this area?
Dean, do you want to take a stab?
It's just going to be materials, basically produced from, the site across the access way, various gravelly materials, I believe.
Like aggregate, rock of different size. That's all processed next door, and this gives them an opportunity to store it in addition to on the site at 34 Meadow, right close by. And
So
another comment I wanted to raise is that the issue with respect to flood elevation and flood compliance, that's part of the zoning commission's purview. I'm glad you asked the question, but the zoning commission does have to look at it since the property is within a CAM zone, and we have to comply with all the CAM requirements for flood and flood proofing and protection against making sure that the nearby tidal wetlands are also protected. So it'll get another.
okay, so protected from, say, like pollutants that might be in these aggregates or anything like that, that's being overseen by CAM as well?
That's part of it. In addition, the application is in all likelihood going to be sent to the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection Office of Long Island Sound Programs for them to review as part of the process. So if there are any questions with respect to what is stored, how it's stored, those questions will also be vetted during the next process with zoning as well.
So what, maybe you referenced 34 Meadow Street and the operation there, maybe just a little bit more information about what is done there? I mean, it's a rock crushing operation or?
Yes, at 34 Meadow Street, it's an indoor rock crushing facility. And that's if you would recall the aerial map that we started with, it's a square building that is adjacent to the 50-foot wide right-of-way to the northeast. Materials are brought in, they're crushed into individual sizes, and then those aggregate materials are currently stored outdoors. But that material is all processed indoors at the 34 Meadow Street location under an approval granted in a special permit and CAM approval granted by the Zoning Commission in 2017.
Aaron had a question.
Yeah,
So, oh, go ahead, Ed.
I had one question. On the area that's south, was there any I'm hearing two different things here. The area to the south, was there any consideration to removing part of the berm to connect it to salt marshes?
I don't believe that we gave that any consideration since the effort was to revegetate that area. You're talking about the area that's beyond where the stockpile material areas would be, the location that Kate was describing as to be revegetated with additional new plantings that don't exist today.
That's correct.
I won't answer for Kate, but I don't know what other consideration might have been given to connect to the marsh. However, there's also an intervening property between that area and the marsh. There's back end, I believe, if my recollection serves correctly, the back end of the Crystal LLC Grasso piece kind of is between us and the marsh. Am I right on that, Dean?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't have anything to add to that. When Dean and I started this, that wasn't under consideration at the time.
Yeah, I just thought it would be good to reconnect the salt marshes.
But this property doesn't abut the salt marsh. There's another parcel between this narrow strip and the edge of the marsh at Village Creek.
Okay.
On the other side.
I can.
I have just two questions. What do they do now to store their material?
Some of the material, the stockpile material, is stored at the 34 Meadow Street site outdoors, outside the building. There are stockpile material areas that are designated on the approved site plan, and those are the locations where aggregate is maintained today. It's not as large as they would like it to be. And if you see on to the right of the screen in front of you, the building on the right, and there are some stockpile material areas in front of that building, which is, there's kind of a hash mark area, generally in that area.
Okay. And then can you confirm that the material is not building debris material?
Dean, do you have better information on exactly what the materials are? I can certainly get that. I don't have it specifically, and I think Commissioner DeStefan is a great question, and we can find out more specifics for you if you'd like. But if Dean, you have any further
just that it's going to be aggregate, different types of aggregate, different types of soil materials, crushed materials.
Okay.
Okay. Stephen?
Yeah, I guess I feel like other agencies have more relevant concerns than we do, just because what is there, and I think this was related to, I think, how Alexis described it as we began. It's sort of like the soil is under there, but is it actively doing anything that we would say acts like a wetland? I would think the answer is probably no. And I don't even know, like, I guess I just feel like the wetlands designation is kind of like maybe second or third on the priority list as far as like who should be deciding what happens to this site. Does that make any sense? Like, and I'm wondering, like, what do we do with that? Do we say like, oh, all right, we'll leave it up to those guys and they are more in tune to how it's going to affect the sound and everything than we are, or what?
Well, if I may, your jurisdiction and authority is essential and important in that there are wetlands on the property, and we have to be cognizant and respectful of those. And whatever we propose can't have an adverse impact on those wetlands, and if there were any watercourses on the property. So your area of review is specific to you and is as important as it would be the zoning commission's review of the special permit and the coastal requirements and coastal policies and resources that may exist nearby. So while you have a certain limit to what you are responsible to review, consider, and act upon, it's as important as those areas that the other commission will review when it goes before them as well.
Yeah, I would just add that jurisdictional boundaries are not hierarchical. It's more complementary.
Okay.
So yeah,
Well, I guess I'm just wondering, like, what's happening there now versus what's going to happen there? How are those different? I guess is the delineation and elevation and that big 20-foot wall, is that the big change to what's happening there? Or is it the permeability of the site because now it's dirt and it's going to be, you know, packed asphalt, gravel, whatever? Like these are all things that will be changing, right?
Well, one of the changes is right now it's not being used for any purpose whatsoever. It's just vacant.
Right.
Among the changes are there will be the northern half acre or thereabout will be used to store materials. There will be drainage installed so that it drains properly and with proper protections for any water that leaves the site when it finally does reach the resource, the water surrounding it. There will be some activity on the site which had not been on the site to any great degree or properly regulated. But now the site to be used will have your approval, if you deem it appropriate to approve it, your continuing control to make sure it meets the requirements and is maintained and used in a way that's consistent with whatever approval you grant. So there's greater control and greater oversight moving forward for the use of this property, which right now there's no use whatsoever. There will be new, as Kate indicated, there's over 100 plantings proposed to revegetate an area that really is just a dirt area that had been an access way between the Grasso site to the south and to the Meadow Street site and city carding and the like to the north.
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, like right now, I mean, if you want to look at it objectively, that land should belong to the marsh, right? Like we should have never flattened that off in the first place and made it into a place that people use. So like, why would we grant permission to like use it even more, but I guess more responsibly? I guess I'm trying to take a step backwards and wonder like, well, wouldn't it be better for water, you know, wetland, the marsh and everything, just for that to become a, you know, a buffer against the next time we get a massive storm? Like, why would we approve the development of a space that shouldn't even have been developed in the first place?
Well, I guess we're getting into a discussion more about property rights and what people can or can't do with their property. And while I understand and appreciate your position, this is a use that is permitted in the zone for this property, provided we maintain it in a way that's respectful and meets the regulations and the requirements and standards, and provided that it's approved by you and the zoning commission. But I think your conversation and your topic is one of has a greater, more expansive, have more expansive connotations than this particular application right at this time. I don't know, Kate, maybe do you have anything else to add to that?
No, not right now.
Well, most likely you've got runoff from every surface adjacent to this dirt area, and by, you know, putting something engineered there, at least we'd be catching some of the crap that's already been draining off into the marsh for the past however many 100 years.
Very true.
I mean, I could
I'm just thinking out loud, that's all.
Right. I mean, I'll just take that thought and say right now it is an exposed active driveway that's dirt, that is actively eroding and actively being used by vehicles. So by essentially taking half of it out of its use and restoring it, it will reduce the amount of disturbance and destruction that is currently occurring on the property. And the area that is being asked for reuse is being increased with erosion controls and drainage controls, which are now absent on the property. And all of those will contribute to a marginal improvement of the area.
Right.
All right, John.
I just want to say that I live very close by, and over time, the marsh has been encroached on endlessly and for decades. And at this point, there's a very active effort to try to maintain it as it is and have it not be worsened. As far as this property that we're discussing tonight is concerned, there is no evidence of any sort of freshwater. One would not have any idea that there was such a thing anywhere near this spot. I don't know whether water gets to it in some way underground, but there's nothing other than the soils. There isn't anything on that property that would make you think of a stream or a swale or something that we would normally see.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
All right.
Well, we have to make a decision on this by when?
I don't have the file in front of me. So in a normal world, you have 65 days to render a decision. It is an intermediate regulated activity, unless you feel that it warrants a significant regulated activity application.
And Steve just raised his hand. Go ahead, Steve.
Alexis, finish.
Oh, okay. Unless there's there's no public hearing unless you determine that it's a significant regulated activity, or if it has a lot of public interest. And then, so typically that deadline is 65 days from the receipt of the application. There are some, if the applicant is interested, that can be extended if necessary, due to some of the governor's orders. But I would encourage you to try to have a somewhat regular meeting schedule. We cannot meet at your usual time because of virtual meeting licenses. The Common Council, as you know, meets at the same time that you do. And they feel that they should go first and not you.
So it is hierarchical there.
Yeah, that is hierarchical. Yeah, so we're probably looking at Thursdays like we're doing now, maybe. I have to look at the calendar and get pre-approval. But as far as timeline, I don't think there's any crunch on your end to render a decision.
Okay.
That's
And if we wanted to go see it and get out of our house and maintain social distances, could we drive onto this dirt road? Is it accessible? I'm not familiar. I am familiar with the general area, but I'm not familiar with this property at all. So it would be kind of interesting to see the tidal wetland there, but I haven't left my house in a long time, so who knows?
If you want to see it, the way to see it is to go down Woodward Avenue to Neptune Avenue, which is a proper street. But across the street from Neptune Avenue is the driveway that leads into a commercial area. That happens to be the right-of-way that's established on the city maps. And you can drive down that path. I think it's private property, but I mean, I don't think anybody minds, and walk to the end of it. And when you get to the end of it, next to what's called the Lion Cords Company, you can make your way up and have a look. I mean, it's accessible that way. I don't think it's accessible at all from Meadow Street.
Okay, thanks.
and Steve had his hand raised.
Can I, so whoever's in charge of what we all see, can you flip to the Google aerial map with the purple and the orange
Yeah.
two yellow square labels?
Purple and orange. Hold on a second.
Or can I share my? No,
You could share
I
yours.
can't share
or
my screen.
Here's.
Host disabled. Doesn't
Oh,
matter.
okay. I've got it coming.
Okay.
Are you talking about this one? This one? This? All best there. A lot of clicks. This one?
Yes. Okay, thank you. So I guess I'm just wondering, as was mentioned about property rights and then, the grand scheme of things, are other commissioners comfortable with the sort of trade-off? I love Ed's idea of giving that the landscape area, the orange, assuming that belongs to this property owner, I guess it's included in the application, so I assume it is included. If we did give that entirely back in elevation wise to the salt marsh, would that be an option? Is that, something the applicant would consider? And B, do we think that is a reasonable trade-off to justify saying, okay, well, if it was my property, I would be pretty ticked that I am not able to use it. But on the other hand, we don't want to necessarily condone additional development anywhere near, the sound and salt marshes and such. What others think about that as far as being a sort of best we can do trade-off?
Well, I have to say, I don't see how the two parcels of salt marsh connected. Anyway, it seems to me that you've got one piece of salt marsh that's no longer connected to the ocean. That's what it looks like. So there may be culverts, or there may be some other way that that these two pieces communicate with each other. That's something we don't know.
I think you're absolutely right, because you see the lines, the channels of that kind of line up on either side of the orange section. And so I would assume that is how it does function right now. I don't even know if it's an improvement if you were to get rid of the raised elevation in the orange section and drop it all down to its natural height. I mean, I assume that's a better thing, but I don't know that for sure. I'm just throwing it out there.
Okay.
I don't know that. I'm just telling you where my brain is at right now. That's all.
All right.
Yeah.
We are a conservation commission, so,
Liz, did you have a comment? Oh. Let me There you go, Liz.
Okay.
Oh.
The proposal is to take that southern portion and reestablish it as a vegetated area.
But it wasn't raised up originally. Like naturally, it would be down low, and we wouldn't even see anything there, right?
Well, I can't say what it used to be. I can only deal with what it is today and what we intend to do to improve it.
Right.
So that the area that we need or we'd like to use does not encompass the entirety of the site. So the southern end would have all of the plantings as Kate described and all the protections, and make it more, I guess, wooded, vegetated, or natural, and trying to return it to something similar to what it was years before the development of this area as an industrial area of town. That's about all we can do. And I think it's probably better to leave the elevations as they are, plant the vegetation, install the drainage systems on the portion of the property that we plan to use, rather than start to change elevations and who knows what other issues may be created by that.
Yeah, if it's functioning already, then by digging up a bunch of stuff and stirring it up, are we actually improving it? I don't know. I'm just curious what other people think. I hear what you're saying.
Cheryl had a comment.
Yeah, on another question for you. I was just looking at the way that the walls are that are closest to the wetland, and they have a very unusual shape. And I was wondering if you could tell me what is driving that shape, like, and what the distance is from the wetland to those walls, because it's kind of unusual.
It's really just following the level area of the site. That's really what the walls do. And from the walls, it starts to drop down towards the wetland.
And what is the distance of the walls to the wetland line? Because I don't have it on paper, so I can't measure. I guess the closest, the closest that it's running.
I think the closest is this 25-foot here.
Okay.
Yes.
At wetland flag number 6.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
And just to clarify, the applicant is not the property owner, correct?
That's correct.
And you had mentioned that the property is within the flood zone.
It's within the coastal area management zone.
But also in a flood zone?
Dean, does the flood line go directly through the entirety?
Not, well, it does through the property, yes. It runs along the eastern portion of the property and then cuts through our storage yard at the western end.
Okay.
Okay. So part of the contractor's yard storage area would be within the 100-year flood zone.
Yes.
And so when that's inundated, so I'm just trying to imagine you have your I want to make sure I understand. So you have your block wall, and then on the bottom of the block wall, you said that the two bottom layers would be wrapped in some kind of geotextile?
Yes.
Okay.
A fabric would be around that, around.
Like a kind of a strong industrial strength. Okay. And that fabric would be exposed on the inside of the yard, or
It'd be essentially on both sides. It would wrap around, go down underneath and back up on the outside of the wall.
okay. Okay. And then, so during a flood event, would you have saltwater intrusion into the walled area?
Yeah, potentially there would be, so if the water, if the flood elevation did actually get up that high, yes, there would be some saltwater intrusion. Yes. The filter fabric, and obviously the wall is not a solid wall. It's blocks
Right.
stuck together,
Right.
stacked together. So there would be, water would be allowed to go in and out. And the fabric would essentially filter out sediment travel or stop sediment travel, but still allow the water to go in and out.
Do you have a spec for the sediment? I didn't remember seeing that on your plan. Do you have a spec for that?
I have one that I can submit. It wasn't on the detail,
Okay.
but we will submit one.
Okay. Because I think that would be one of the concerns is those, it's all those, I know that you're talking about aggregate, but anytime you move a lot of rock, there's a lot of fines. And so that kind of going back and back and forth and more kind of out of the contractor's yard and then across the inland wetland strip and then into the tidal wetlands, just trying to figure out how you would manage those conditions when there is a flood event.
Sure. Yeah, no, I can supply you with a specification for that.
Okay.
For that material.
John had his hand up.
So, well, that's an, I'll ask another, okay. I have non-inland wetland related questions.
All right, go ahead, John.
I have one more thing. If any of the commissioners want to take a look, 310 Wilson Avenue is not the address of the property. I think it's the address of the owner of the property. I don't think it has an address per se, and the only real way to see it is to come in through Woodward, and that probably should be worked out with the staff.
If I may, that address was provided to us, and it also has its own district block and lot by virtue of a lot line revision map that was approved and recorded on the land records.
Okay, well, I'm sure it's a perfectly good address. It's just not good in terms of trying to get to the property.
You're very right. It is tortured to get there. You probably could go down the 50-foot right of way if you want to take your chances with city carting and those folks. But if there's a way that we can make arrangements to have someone perhaps meet you there when there aren't trucks around and keeping social distancing in place, we'll see what we can do to accommodate that.
Well, you don't have to do it from Meadow Avenue. You can do it from Woodward, and then you don't have to worry about city carting or anything.
Well, Woodward Avenue, if you come behind Lion Court and you come straight ahead, there's fencing and there's I don't know if you can gain access directly behind line court. I think there's an entire fence the length of the property plus plantings in connection with that contractor's yard back there. I could be wrong.
Well, I live nearby and I've walked it myself, so I can tell you the fence, if it ever was there, is gone now.
Did I stand corrected? I'm sorry.
That's right.
And then Alexis, I just want to clarify, we're not doing public hearing, right?
Correct.
Okay, because we had a question from the public, but I guess they should get.
Regarding this, oh, okay. Oh, I see. So no, so there's 4 attendees.
So I don't know if can you see it or no? Otherwise I would.
Yeah, I can, but I don't, but no, we cannot take public comment regarding this application, at least tonight.
Okay.
Or in the future. Sorry about that. But we'll note that you asked. Okay.
Okay, well, this is a
So
lot of,
I guess,
information.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Alexis.
go
Sorry.
ahead. Go ahead.
All right, well, I just was going to say it was a lot of information. It sounds like if it's possible to go ahead and try and access the property, otherwise maybe Google Earth is your best bet. I hear what Steve is saying. I tend to agree with him in that if you do take the property down in that segment that's being mitigated anyway, are you going to create more damage or not? I tend to think that it should probably be left as is, but with all the plantings added. But I guess I personally don't see this as something that needs a public hearing, but I could be wrong. So I'd like to hear what the other commissioners feel about that. You said, Alexis, you said it's intermediate, correct?
Right, so it's an intermediate application. Again, for intermediate applications, you do not hold a public hearing unless one of 3 things happen. The first would be that you would make the determination that it's a significant regulated activity. And a significant regulated activity is different from just a public hearing. So a public hearing is part of a significant regulated activity. Significant regulated activities, there are also some other things that happen when you determine that a activity warrants a significant regulated activity. But if you do determine that it warrants a significant regulated activity, a public hearing is required. You could also have a public hearing if you receive a petition from this working from home. I didn't bring my regulations. I believe it's 25 citizens. I think it's 25 can sign a petition asking for a public hearing. And then you can also have a public hearing if you feel that a public hearing would be in the public interest. So you can, I think that what I was asking for tonight was a determination whether the application warrants a significant regulated activity. And I'd encourage you to I think you have enough information to determine that tonight. And then you still have an opportunity in the upcoming 65 days to judge whether there is significant public interest.
May I?
Yeah.
Just a few things to keep in mind. First of all, and we should have explained this at the outset, there are no loss of wetlands. We're not conducting any activities within the wetlands. The closest disturbance is 25 feet from the wetlands for the block wall and the plantings. And the reason that we are before you, in addition to the distance of activity to the wetland edge, there is 760 square feet of disturbance in the upland review area. So those are the things of concern. The disturbance in the upland review area of 760 square feet, the distance to the wetland is 25 feet, but there is no loss of wetland, no activity being undertaken within the wetland. I would also like to remind you that although it's not a concern for you, but the zoning commission holds a mandatory public hearing on the special permit application that's pending before it. And so the public will have certainly an opportunity to be heard, at least on that aspect. And in light of the conversation we've had today, clearly the zoning commission it's not within its jurisdiction or purview to consider inland wetland issues. But I wanted you to just to be reminded of the extent of the disturbance, the extent of the extent of the activity, and the fact that over a 2.3 acre parcel, the wetlands encompass just over a half acre, and the disturbance in the upland review area is very little, very limited.
Thank you, Liz. I think what might be a good way to do this is if everyone goes around and indicates whether you think this is a significant activity or not. I'll start. I don't think so. I think it remains as an intermediate, but that's my opinion. How about John next?
I'm muted, but I agree. Thumbs up.
Okay. How about Cheryl next?
I agree, it's an intermediate.
Okay, and Steve, you're gonna tell us what you think.
Agreed.
How about you, Ed?
Yeah, I'd go for the intermediate.
Okay. All right, so we're in agreement on that. I think we'll process the information, and I didn't hear anybody asking, aside from, I'm curious about the material, but no one seemed to ask for any additional material for this application in terms of questions. I'm sorry, Liz?
Yes, Chairwoman DeSantis, you had asked for specifications on the sediment control measures, greater information about the type of aggregate, and also how the flood events would be managed. So those are the three things that I saw as additional information that you or others had requested.
Yeah, I think you're correct. Is there anything else that was missed?
Anything else, we're happy to provide it.
Okay, I don't hear anything else, so I would say thank you very much for your presentation, and thanks for your patience for going on video.
Our pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So you will move to the next meeting agenda. I don't yet have a date, and it will be at 6 o'clock. I don't have a confirmed date, but our goal, I think, would be to meet in the next two weeks. But I need to look at other meetings by the city. But so we'll let you know as soon as we know the meeting date.
That's fine.
Okay. Okay. Oh,
Oops, thanks.
I think Liz was talking. Sorry. Oh,
There we go.
sorry.
Oh.
We're both
Sorry, I just wanted to say thank you for your time. And for your patience, and I hope everyone stays safe and stays healthy. And we look forward to talking to you whenever the next meeting is scheduled. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so our next item now is for a public hearing. So before we actually open up the public hearing, I think what we should do is, so that I have an understanding, because no one's signing up, but we have perhaps attendees for the public hearing. So how does that process work?
So we could have them do two things. They can use the raise their hand feature. We have one phone number dialed in. I don't know if that's Ed or not. If it's not Ed and it's someone who would like to participate, they could hit the #6, and that allows them to raise their hand. Anybody else could raise their hand, or they can type in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen, and I can let you guys know if anyone has any comments or questions, and Alexis can too, to read them to you guys.
Okay, all right, so we have a plan then. Okay.
Right. And so one of the attendees, Mary, she is actually part of the applicant team.
Okay.
Okay, I could promote her if you want.
And
to.
so if she could be promoted to a panelist now. Perfect. And so then we have the phone number. Ed, is the last digit, is that your phone number ending in 187?
I don't know.
Okay, fair enough. No worries.
I mean, that's number I dialed in on.
Okay, then it should be you. Okay,
Okay.
that's good.
Okay.
All right.
So we're going to get started as we would normally do. And I'll go through the way we're going to handle the public hearing, and we'll, so let's just do that.
Okay.
Let's get it started. Okay, it's 7 o'clock, so that's great. All right. I'd like to call to order the public hearing for S19 548 35 Huckleberry Drive, South Rich. Corrective action, removal of fill, restoration of wetlands, and construction of a 2-story addition in and adjacent to a wetland and a watercourse. Can I have the roll call, please?
Ed Holowinko,
Present?
Karen DeStefanis,
Here.
John Mailing, John Mailing.
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know if
Yep.
I'm
Sorry,
mute or what.
I unmuted you. Stephen Clocky
Here.
and Cheryl Brown.
Here.
Okay, so before we get into the public hearing, for any attendee who is present for this particular item number, what will happen is the applicant is going to make a presentation of what they are proposing to do. The commissioners, I'll ask you to wait until the applicant is finished with their presentation to ask your questions. Typically in the past, we've maybe interrupted during the course of their presentation, but I think it will work better if we just wait to the end. And then after the commissioners have asked their questions and gotten their responses, then we will turn it over to the attendees. If you're an attendee that's interested, please raise your hand and we will allow you to speak. We are looking for information that maybe you are aware of that we are not, and maybe something that should be brought to our attention, something related to this application. We are not interested in items such as traffic and noise and things like that, but something specific to the wetlands and potential impacts to the wetlands. And if you are speaking, we are going to ask you to please state your name and your address so that we have an idea of your relationship to this particular property. I don't think we can say if you're for or against. I think it's just going to be you raise your hand and then we'll call on you. And then the applicant will have the opportunity to respond to any kind of questions that may merit some response. At that point, I think we'll allow the commissioners also to follow up with any questions. And I think we'll go from there. Just as a point of interest for everybody, for the attendees anyway, there's not a dialogue between you and the applicant. It is your questions or your comments, and you have that opportunity once to state your information. It's not, we won't be going back and asking you to speak further. So, okay, having said all of that, can you read the legal notice? Is there a legal notice? We don't have the legal notice. Alexis, you're muted. Wait, you have to unmute.
I got it.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes, this is actually a continuation of the hearing. I forgot to bring a copy of the legal notice with me, or to forward it to myself, or store it so I could access it remotely. But it was legally and noticed in the newspaper twice. And they did receive confirmation from the applicant that the adjacent property owners had been noticed of the hearing.
Okay. All right.
when it first started.
Okay. Great. So at this point, we'll turn it over to the applicant to make your presentation.
Hi, my name is Doreen Rich. I'm the property owner of 35 Huckleberry Drive South. First, I'd like to extend my condolences for the loss of the chair, John Verrill, and also to thank the commission for having this meeting tonight. Just by way of background to summarize, since it's been some time since we've been here on this application, I purchased the property in September, and there was a substantial amount of fill that was placed on the property by the previous owners. We hired Otto Thiel, a soil scientist, to conduct some testing to see if there were wetlands, because prior to our purchase, there were no mapped wetlands on the property. We also subsequently hired Mary Jenning, and sorry about that, Mary. And Otto and Mary came out and they did a second round of testing to determine the wetland lines. As some of you may know, there was as much as 13 feet of fill placed on the property. So that was a big undertaking. And we have the wetlands marked and mapped. They were submitted with our application. And we also have Barbara Wilson, who created a plan for us to remediate the property, to remove soil, and we're looking to create a balance to restore the wetlands and create something that is aesthetically appealing and that fits in with the character of the neighborhood. Our backyard abuts several other properties, so we wanted to create something that also worked well. And that's it. From here, I'll let Barbara present the plan.
And Alexis, is it possible for me to share my screen? Because I have them queued up in order. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think Brian's working on giving you permissions.
Let's see. Barbara, if you go to the top, does it give you the option to share your screen?
It's saying host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay.
Okay, there it is.
Okay, there we go.
Hi, I'm Barbara Wilson. I'm a licensed landscape architect. I've been in practice over 25 years. Here is an aerial view of the property probably last year, sometime in 2019, and you'll notice that there's a significant amount of clearing on the property. Right now, the property is 1.37 acres. About 0.37 of that is wetlands, and there is 181 lineal foot intermittent water course sort of in this area, which is basically along the property line. The water starts here from a pipe that the city had put in on the property. It must connect a river from on the other side of the road, and then it discharges along the owner's property. The current wetlands in the back of the property from about this section here, is all wooded wetlands, and there's no damage to that from the previous owner. What we are going to do is about 1.1 acres of wetlands has been disturbed, and 0.25 acres right now of upland review area has been disturbed basically in this area, which is the fill. The fill goes all the way down to this line and then comes up to about somewhere in here. I'd like to go to a cross section. This is a cross section of the property from between where the house is, where the future pool is, and the two retaining walls we're planning to put in to stabilize the slope, and then where the existing wetlands line was determined by Otto Thiel, which is down in this area, this pink line. So here's a cross section of what is there now is this dash line. So you can see at the existing hump, and then there's about 13 feet here and then it comes up and goes like that. So what we're proposing to do is take some of the soil out. We are going to be taking most of it off the property, and then some of it is going to be used here on the top to create a more level playing area for the family to enjoy with their kids that can safely access it, and their dog. So at the top of the retaining wall, which is here next to the pool, and sort of this area here. Then there's going to be 2 retaining walls, which are gradually going to create an embankment that goes down the 13 feet down to the existing wetlands, which this is the line, which is where the existing wetlands was determined to be, and that is going to be planted. So this is the site plan of where the retaining walls are going to go. There's going to be a retaining wall on the north property line, and then 2 sloping retaining walls going down the slope, and then another one here. There's going to be some stairs fit into the slope to access and provide the owner access to maintain the property and get through the property and into their backyard in the wetlands. This plan is, you can have images of what the walls are going to look like. They're going to be big boulders set by machines. The steps are going to be irregular stones set into the slope. And then at the top of the wall where the pink line is with fences. Sorry, where did I put the fence? It's hard to see. So the fence line will go on the north property line, down below the lowest walls, curve around back, and then connect to an existing fence here. So this will be wood boards with wire, so that this will double as the pool enclosure fence, keep the dogs in, and also keep the kids safe in the backyard. So this is the area right now that is in the wetlands where there are significant trees that were removed. The logs are stored in this area, which is on a portion of the wetlands. So this area we are proposing to remove all the logs, and then we will replant. This area from this line to this pink magenta line is the areas of the filled wetlands that were determined by Otto's latest report. So this area is going to basically be, all of the dirt is going to be removed and reestablish the existing slopes basically to the wetlands when they determine it by the soil type. And we will be replanting that area and stabilizing it. So this is the plan of what we're going to propose. So after all the soil and regrading activities are happened, then we are going to add some specific plants in certain areas. So the area here, which is the existing wetlands that had the logs piled on it, we are going to put a wooded wetland mix. This is meant specifically for areas that are shady. There's going to be 2 varieties of ferns and some American hornbeams, which are sort of native in this area in the woodlands. And it's going to be planted directly into the existing wetland soils that are under the stacked trees. There's no grading there, no filling. So then on the reclaimed wetland area, which is this sort of chartreuse color right here, we are planning to put in a New England wetland seed mix over the entire area. This has a wide variety of native seeds that are suitable for most wetland restoration areas that are not permanently flooded. They might flood once in a while seasonally. This mix includes 17 different varieties of species. There are several grassy mixes like carex and juncus. And then there's some flowering wetland plants like verbena and asclepia and irises. And that way, with the seed mix, what wants to be there and can be established there will grow well. And then anything that's in that mix that doesn't like it will not survive, but hopefully there's enough species that will take quickly and fill in this area. So the dark green area is part of where the existing slope starts going uphill at the bottom of the retaining walls. And we're going to be putting there an upland planting mix because this is not in the wetlands. This is in the upland review area, and this has a few, and in this area too. So there'll be some shade trees like red maples and some black gums. See 1, 2 over here, the tree symbols. Then we're going to be planting some shrubs that are going to be like summer sweet, red osier dogwood, and winterberry. And then the rest of the area is going to be seeded to a wildflower mix that is better for upland areas. There are a variety of pollinator friendly species, as well as berries for the birds and wildlife. And then this will help stabilize the graded slope. So then the rest of the area is going to be planted to lawn up at the top most level surrounding the house and the pool. So that's it for me. Oops.
Hi, at this point, I guess we'd like to see if there's any questions from the commission.
I'll ask one. Barbara, for your for the trees, are those proposed to be container? They're only 4 to 5 feet tall. Are they container?
Some of these are containers, and some of these, I think the 4 to 5 foot ones are, some of them are bare root. We found that in these situations that sometimes the bare root will take more quickly, because they have a smaller root system, and then they will be able to take over rather than being in a container which has, I call it non-native soils, right? We found that the remediation plantings, these are going to be grown up in a wetland remediation nursery up in Massachusetts, that they take better from in this location, in a location like this, having been grown in the field and then sort of bare rooted and sent to us.
Okay, and what seasonally, when would a bare root plant be optimally planted?
So we have a spring window, which is sort of April to May, and then we have a fall window, which is September, October, November.
Okay.
Cheryl had a question.
Okay.
I really like the carpinus that you're planting down in the woodland. I think that's a great native tree. One thing that concerns me a little bit with the planting plan is the wetland that was there before was a woodland wetland, and it was comprised. It was a shaded area. And when it was cleared, it's now very sunny. And I see that you have a sun mix, a wetland sun mix in there. But it would be really great to see some more trees in there to try to reestablish what might have been there before. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, yes, we are actually installing 9 trees on the slope, and then 5 trees in the woodlands. So the thing about this is I'm a little worried about adding as many trees as there were on a steep slope like this. It may or may not be stable enough for the big trees for a while. And so I think the herbaceous material and the shrubs are a good choice for this, for most of this location on the slope.
What about your meadow wetland area? I think is what.
So yeah, I'm speaking about the wetland area where you have the light green area that's actually in the wetland. Mm-hmm. That was the area that I was concerned about. Would you be willing
Sure,
to?
we could add some of those because the Nyssa savanica would be perfect there too, as the red maple. I think most of the trees, when I looked at the bark that's on the trees that were felled, is most of them were red maples. So we've got both of those. So yes, we could add some of those red maples, and then the black gums down that area would be fine. Mhm.
Go ahead, Karen.
Got it.
Good.
Barbara, how long will this take from start to finish to pull back all the material that was deposited in the wetlands and stabilize it and then start planting?
I'm not sure I can answer that. Doreen, do you think you have an estimate from your contractors?
A few months from the approval
For the plantings.
for plantings. So we may catch it at the end of the growing season.
Sorry,
For-
is that
for
David
most
Rich?
of the-
Sorry, David is.
Hi,
Okay.
David Rich,
The voice.
the non-property owner that's married to the property owner.
Okay, so what were you saying again?
Upon approval within a few months, so we could possibly catch the end of the season for most of the varietals. Some of the varietals, we may have to wait until the fall to put in. It would,
And
now,
it's partly dependent on weather because obviously they can't work if it's too rainy.
right.
So what
Condition.
would be, for your grading, how, do you have an estimate for how long the grading would take to complete the fill removal and then regrading?
3 to 6 weeks for the grading, depending on the weather.
3 to 6, okay.
Whatever, obviously when we get approval, we would like to, whatever we can catch this growing season, we would like to plant and stabilize.
Okay, commissioners, anybody else have any questions before I address the attendees?
Was the applicant done with their presentation? I know that was it for Barbara. Was there? I didn't know if the applicants, the rest of the team was here for a presentation or just for answering questions.
They were here in case there were any additional questions.
Okay,
Yes, we've completed our presentation.
thank you. So do any of the attendees wish to say anything or ask anything of the applicant? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go back to the commissioners. Do the commissioners have any further questions? Okay, and of course you.
So for the, oh, John, were you raising your hand? No. Hold on, I think John maybe has a question. Brian, can you unmute John Mailing?
Yeah, there we go. It takes I don't know why it's taking a while.
I think because I'm clicking too.
Oh.
Yeah,
Am I oral now? I mean,
you are now,
all right, well, I don't have any questions and I'm done.
Mhm.
okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
And I forget mine. Sorry, I'm totally blanking. I mean, I think that my main questions also had to do with the planting material and making sure that there was enough quantity. Whenever you plant trees that are not, foundation plants, or plants that are near the foundation or, within the homescape when they're meant to be kind of a wild planting, their mortality is often higher, I have found. And so I just want to make sure that if that the number of proposed, and this goes back, I think, to Cheryl's initial comment, that the number of proposed is in line with something close to restoration, but also something that's going to be viable and live for at least, at a very minimum, the 2 full growing seasons that the commission often holds a bond for. But a lot of times, especially with trees, it's hard to figure out their vitality. The first 2 years, sometimes it's very clear, but other years, they start to have issues kind of further down. So, but I think with some additional trees that might work out. I guess that's it.
You go ahead.
Alexa,
Sorry, Karen. Oh, Doreen.
yes, sorry. As you brought up the bond, which also brings up a good point, we wanted to ask, in light of the fact that we did not create the current conditions, and we would like to put our resources into remediation if the commission would agree to a surety bond rather than a cash bond.
Alexis, what's the city's position on that?
So it is, your regulations say that it is up to you, and you have approved some surety bonds in the past. Often we have a 2-bond system where there's a cash bond for the sedimentation and erosion controls, and then for the longer term stuff, there could be a surety bond. So it's certainly doable. The law department has some requirements for the quality of the company providing the surety. It's not very high, and you would submit that whatever company you're looking to use, Doreen, and then we'd get it approved by the law department. But I think if the commission is amenable, that this would be a good place to do that.
Do we need a motion?
No, I don't think so. I think as long as you, we can address that in the conditions, or when when you do approve it, we can work that out.
Okay.
It's really, again, it's the condition typically says a bond be posted in a form acceptable to the agency, and that same language is mimicked in your regulations. So if any of you have objections to a surety, let me know immediately, but otherwise we can make that work.
Okay, so procedurally, we've asked for changes in the planting plan to show more trees. I think Cheryl brought up a great point, and you've kind of seconded that. Can we close the public hearing, or do we need to wait for a revised plan?
Generally, I would recommend that you keep the public hearing open, because you want your public hearing is what you base your decision on, unless, I don't know if maybe the applicant and Barbara can kind of talk real quickly behind our backs, and maybe have some kind of quick discussion regarding the number of additional trees that might be proposed within what's currently called the Meadow Wetland area.
Or if they prefer, because I don't want them to be, I don't want anyone to feel pressured.
Right.
So, yeah, we have to be kind of flexible here. So if you want us to keep the public hearing open, that's fine too. I just wasn't sure procedurally where we should go with this, so.
Yep.
Doreen's got her hand raised. Go ahead, Doreen.
I was going to say, obviously, we're still hopeful that maybe we could get some work done and get some of the planting in this season. And I'd be more than happy to make it a condition to add, an additional 5 trees or a number that the commission thinks is reasonable.
Okay, so you,
There's 5 proposed in the wooded wetland plantings area now, so that would double the amount of trees that we'd be putting in that area.
right. I mean, I think, Karen, to answer your question, I think that I don't have a draft resolution prepared for tonight.
No, I understand that.
Okay, and typically you don't, when you have a public hearing, you don't immediately go to a motion to approve.
No, but I was wondering if I could actually close the public hearing.
Yeah, I think that as long as the applicant is comfortable with, that we'll come up with, I'll come up with a draft resolution for you to consider if you did close it. I think what I'm hearing is that you'd be, the other elements of the proposal, the timing, the grading, the proposed topography, the planting plan, the other elements of the planting plan seem to be acceptable. The wetland limit, all those kind of issues, except for this additional planting. So I'm confident that you could close the public hearing and I could come up with a condition that would cover that concern.
Okay, so let me pose a question to the commissioners. Are you comfortable with this, with closing the public hearing at this point? Or do you want it to remain open?
I believe we can close it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we should close it.
Good. Cheryl? Are you
Yes, I agree.
satisfied with their commitment for an additional 5 trees?
I still feel like 5 is a somewhat small amount considering how wooded the area was. I think Alexis, do you have a thought on it? Like, I don't know how much direction we can give here.
I think you can. I think you can give direction. I mean, I certainly have a lot of information regarding the planting density. There's a lot of planting density calculators for doing wetland restoration work. I can come up with let me just go back to Barbara. Do you have there's no real planting density that you use necessarily, I'm assuming, as far as your plants per area? I don't have it.
No, so what I did is I'm trying to plant to what the conditions are going to be when we restore this. It's going to be full sun. We have to put some material in the seed mix that can handle the full sun, and then the slope. So when I looked at the trees that were taken down, there might only be about 10 significant trees, and they would have been spaced pretty, if you look at the woods there now, they're spaced pretty far apart. It's just their canopies are, 50 feet across. So it's not how many trees, it's where there still would be spaced kind of intermittently, but I'm trying to plant for what is going to be there now after we regrade. So that was my idea, is to get it stable as soon as possible so there isn't dirt running off into the existing wetlands. And yes, we could add some more trees. Maybe we could go 10 or 15 if that, that range at the most, I think, to allow it to stabilize.
Yeah, I think, in the proposed marshy wetland seed mix, that would be like the ideal place to be planting the trees versus, in the already wooded wetlands.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, so what some of the material that's there now is full sun. Some of the juncuses and the carex, those are full sun material that are there now in the wetlands that are established. So I don't think that the wetlands was all wooded or all sun. So I think it's, as you said, it's going to be a sort of a dynamics of a different. So yes, we could add some trees.
Okay.
Okay, do the commissioners have any other comments or questions? Because if not, I'd love to hear someone make a motion. Maybe to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'm sorry.
Nope, that's okay. I'll tell you, it's S19 548 35 Huckleberry Drive South.
Okay.
Okay, so the
Do I have to
motion.
say that again?
Nope, I don't think so. I think I'm okay for
We know where we are.
intruding. So the motion's been made by Cheryl Brown, and it's been seconded by
I'll second it.
Ed Halowinko. Any further discussion to close the public hearing? All those in favor, please.
I'll just do a roll call real quick. So all those in favor, so, excuse me, Karen DeStefanis,
Aye.
Ed Halowinko,
Aye.
John Mailing,
Aye.
Steve Clocky,
Aye.
Cheryl Brown.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, the motion's been made. The public hearing is now closed. Mrs. Rich, I guess you'll work with Alexis to provide her with an updated planting plan or something. And then Alexis, you'll work on coming up with a draft resolution.
Correct.
And you were present for the previous application, so we're not exactly sure when our next meeting will be, but you will be one of the first to know.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks, Otto and Mary.
Okay. So I guess we're going to go on to item 6, which is approval of the minutes.
Yes, please.
Okay. These are the March 10th, 2020 meeting minutes. Does anybody have any comments or changes to those minutes? If you do, raise your hand because I can see you. Okay. Does someone want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes of March 10th, 2020.
Okay, the motion's been made by Ed Halowinko, seconded by,
I'll second it.
okay, thank you. Seconded by Cheryl Brown. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please. Alexis.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Karen DeStefanis.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. John Mailing,
Aye.
Ed Halowinko,
Aye.
Cheryl Brown,
Aye.
and Steve Clocky.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay. Alexis, did you want us to modify the agenda for bonds or no, not tonight?
No, because I forgot to grab the file that was a last minute bond release.
Okay, then we will move on. We have public comments in our agenda, but do we actually, are we doing public comments?
You can, if anyone, any of the attendees wishes to make a public comment. Our public comments cannot be regarding pending applications, but comments in general, you can raise your hand to provide any comments to the Conservation Commission. Again, as long as it's not regarding a pending application.
Has anybody raised their hand?
Nope.
Okay. All right, so we're going to move on to item 8, which is the comments of staff.
I don't, it's late. So the Planning and Zoning and the Conservation Office offices have moved. They moved today, actually. That's why I got these bags under my eyes. So I spend the day going up and down, up and down, up and down from the second floor to the first floor, directing movers. And that's why I'm home today instead of at the office like I planned, because setting up electronics, apparently you just can't plug it in. There's a bit of networking to do. But so I'll keep you posted on that. Brenda, during City Hall is closed. I'm still at City Hall every day, and Brenda comes in at least 2 days a week and she does her inspections. So we will still have some violations. I'll make a report up for you for the next meeting because I don't have it in front of me and my memory is not that great. But we have had in this time of opportunity, there have been some a smattering of wetland violations. Generally, they haven't been really bad violations because the people that are home being the weekend warriors, they also have all their neighbors are home calling our office. So it's been surprisingly busy, but I guess that's okay. But for the next one, I'll give you a list of some of the minor permits that we've issued and some of the violations that we've addressed. But yeah. Busy, surprisingly busy. But that's it, I think.
Okay. I'm unmuted. Okay. Comments of commissioners. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Alexis, for helping us get through this, being our first foray into the future. Hopefully we'll be sitting next to each other sometime sooner than later, but thank you so much. And Brian, thank you so much.
Yes.
You helped us a lot.
Right.
Answering like questions for some of us who are too old to understand what we're doing here. So like, where's that button? But I don't know, do any of the commissioners have comments or anything?
I just wondered, are we sort of tentatively trying to do it every other week, Alexis?
Every 2 weeks, like your usual schedule.
All right.
Yes. That would be my goal.
But most likely on a Thursday?
Yes, I think Brian, can you remember the second Thursday of the month? That's when zoning now meets though, right? I think.
Yeah. There's also like the East Ave COD that gets thrown in there too. So there's,
Yeah.
yeah, I think Thursdays look pretty good for you guys to do. I know Tuesdays are tough, I think.
Right. Tuesdays are tough, but, oh no, it would be, I think, I don't know. I'll try Thursday. We'll work around it.
All right. You know what? No pressure. Just let us know.
There's the land use agencies, have a lot of meetings, but between all the Common Council committee meetings and then, like Brian was saying, the TOD, there's a gazillion other groups that meet. And you are a land use agency, so you're a little bit higher up on the ladder for some other groups, but there's definitely a lot of competition as far as scheduling a meeting.
Okay.
Potentially we could do it at a different time if, I don't think, I don't know if people are still, I know that some of you are working from home. So I don't know if, we'll figure it out. I think if we can keep it at 6 o'clock, that would be ideal, and find a day for it.
Okay. All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. Thank you. I think it was unanimous anyway. Thank you again very much, and everyone stay well.
Yeah, thank you for running the meeting for us, Karen. And thanks, Brian, as well for
No
helping
problem.
out with the.
Thanks, Brian. See you next time.
Yep, you're welcome.
And Ed, I love what you've done with the house.
Yeah, it looks just like a Japanese restaurant.
It's amazing.
Little hibachi going in the back.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Well done.
All right, guys, take it easy.
Good, everybody.
All right.
All right.
Until next
All right,
time.
good
Thank
night.
you.